What a fight. It's about an hour after the fight finished, and I can't go to bed yet, no chance. I'm buzzing with what was probably just about the greatest fight I've seen in a British ring, and also a little bit subdued, obviously, because Michael Conlan is in hospital, seemingly responding pretty well, awake and stable, which is good news that Frank Smith has just put out there on Twitter. But still, it was a worrying sign and a worrying situation after he was knocked out of the ring. But what a fight! Mick Conlan was amazing tonight. Boxed. I knew he was a talented fighter. I said he was a talented fighter before, but that left hand that he nailed Wood with in the first round meant that he was basically 4 points up after 3 rounds. He won a few rounds besides those as well, and looked the classier boxer in there, quicker to the punch. His footwork and his judgment of distance was really, really good. And not only did he keep nailing Leigh Wood with that long loopy left from a southpaw stance, but he also did some unbelievable work to the body in the kind of middle rounds that I thought might well have seen Wood tire and kind of fade away, but he didn't. And how Leigh Wood got through the first 3 or 4 rounds, I don't know. I think it was about midway through round 4 that he seemed to get his feet, seemed to start to land a few punches that had an impact on Conlan and gave him the belief as he started to recover his senses. I think he was probably concussed for much of the fight. Such was the heavy knockdown, because that knockdown in the first round, his head hit the canvas going backwards. That's never a good sign. And yeah, he was lucky it was the end of the first round. He was absolutely out for the count all the way through the second, and how on earth he hung on for dear life, I'll never know really, which I think Conlan will look back and think, if he'd have stepped off him and set up his shots, he should have finished him then. But Leigh Wood was incredible, and he kept coming forward. He started to work him out a little bit even, and stayed composed right, like rounds 8, 9, 10. And obviously, he wasn't going to be denied, despite the fact that the 11th, the knockdown in the 11th wasn't really a knockdown punch. He did land a punch, so technically it was a knockdown, but there was a slip that meant that Conlan hit the deck, and he was a bit lucky in that respect. But it was coming. I felt it was coming from about round 9, and I just want to say, I can't believe there haven't been more comparisons with Carl Froch tonight. I mean, I'm here in Spain listening to the Spanish commentary, but I've looked on Twitter and there's very few comparisons to Carl Froch. There's a lot of comparisons to Carl Froch from a negative point of view, like tonight, particularly in terms of defending with your head. I mean, if you think back to the fights with, say, Jermaine Taylor, he got knocked down early in that fight. I think it was round 3, and he was getting schooled for, I'd say, 8, 9 of the 12 rounds in that fight, and he literally took it to the last 12 seconds before he knocked Taylor out right in the nick of time, because he was down on the cards, and there was massive similarities between the two fights. I also thought back to the George Groves fight as well, because that heavy right hand from Groves that knocked him down in the first round, I think it was the first round, meant that Froch was pretty concussed for the first 3, 4, 5 rounds, and took a long time to get his feet back, to get any accuracy in his punches, to get any kind of wherewithal about himself to start to take control of the fight. And even when the fight was stopped, he was swinging from the hips without really being able to set up shots properly. And Leigh Wood was the same tonight. He was, for a long period of that in that fight, he just kept on eating left hands, and he was, his defensive work against that wasn't the best. That said, given that he'd been down so hard in that first round, then I suppose it's forgivable that he couldn't see it coming, because he probably realised that he had to turn into Froch mode, or even more so into Froch mode, in terms of I'm going to take 1 or 2 on the way in, but I'm going to land 3 or 4, and those 3 or 4 are going to do damage. And that's what Leigh Wood did. His conditioning must be incredible, the amount of punishment he took to the body, because Conlan's work to the body was superb. But yeah, the comparisons between Leigh Wood and Carl Froch, the Taylor fight particularly, really, really clear to me, and I'm surprised that not more people are making that shout. And I think from what I've seen, Eddie Hearn and quite a few other people after the fight have talked about Conlan being wide ahead, and it was a real surprise. I didn't have him that wide. I had him ahead. I had him 3 rounds up with two to go, which meant that the 11th round knockdown theoretically meant that it could still end up being a draw, and that's how 2 of the judges had it from what I can see on the scorecard. So I don't think that's how I saw it. I've seen obviously a few people, particularly those in Conlan's camp, saying he was 4 or 5 rounds up. I don't think it was that wide, but I could see how he could have been a couple of rounds up, a round or 2 more than I had him, because he was certainly the superior boxer in there tonight, the superior boxing brain, and he controlled longer periods of the fight than Leigh Wood did. And when he won rounds, particularly early on, he won them very comfortably, whereas Leigh Wood probably nicked a couple of rounds with pressure and eye-catching shots towards the end of rounds in sort of 6, 7, 8, that type of that part of the fight. So just an unbelievable fight. One for the ages. That will go down, and no one's going to celebrate it tonight as much as they should do. They would normally do. Sorry, not should do. We should be thinking about Michael Conlan. That's celebrating it should come secondary to that. But obviously, if that wasn't the case, then people would be lauding, and people would be absolutely swinging from the chandeliers about this fight, because it was just an absolute humdinger. A humdinger. Some of that, there was kind of Ward-Gatty stuff going on in there. I can't remember which round it was, but the exchanges were just literally jaw-dropping. And when he knocked him out the round, out the ring in that 12th round, I think everyone must have just been like, wow. It was just a feeling of incredible emotion, the excitement. That's why we love boxing, and also why we know it's so dangerous as well when you see the state Conlan ended up in. But what a fight. Leigh Wood, what a classy guy. What an absolutely classy guy. All the way through, he's been calm. He's not really got into the bad mouthing and all the bullshit. He's not that kind of character. He just seems to be a really, really nice kid. Really, really tough kid. Really strong physically, who is coming into his own as a boxer, and he didn't box brilliant tonight, but to be honest, like I say, the boxing, you can't really judge him on his boxing tonight, because you can only judge him on his heart and his bollocks and his will to win, and his fortitude and his strength of mind to weather a massive storm. Because for periods of that fight, he didn't have he didn't have any composure, didn't have any really awareness of where he was for a couple of rounds there. So he was fighting on instinct, and when he did start to swing and they swung at the same time, you knew that he was probably going to be the one whose punches would have him more impact. And even if Conlan finished with probably the more eye-catching shot, which he did once or twice, you knew that the compilation of those and the pressure, the total pressure that was being applied by those punches was getting to Conlan. So the final thing to say, again about Leigh Wood, there's not many times that a boxer will have that moment of elation when he's come back from such a difficult position to knock someone out to within 20, 30 seconds of being on the deck with Ben Davis and getting up and straight away recognising and using his ability and his influence on the crowd to tell everyone to calm down and show respect to Michael Conlan. I thought that was just absolutely class, and the kid will get his chance to celebrate, and he'll get his chance to look back on what he's done, look back on what was a very special night sometime, hopefully very soon, when full health is confirmed for Michael Conlan, and he can go away and recover, and at that point, I don't think anyone in the world would begrudge Leigh Wood a few beers and a bit of a celebration on what was just an incredible achievement, incredible night. Can't believe it. I just can't believe it. Absolutely class from both fighters, and they'll both go on to earn more money and be bigger stars than they are now, and rightly so, because they were outstanding tonight.